Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second episode of World Building. I'm Ryan Johnson. I am going to be the storyteller for After the Fall, which will be coming to Scryer Vision soonish. We're hoping within the next couple months here. It is a post-apocalyptic sort of role-playing game that will be focused in, instead of a fantasy world, the world of post-apocalyptic rural Minnesota after a magical apocalypse, because we figured, well, that hadn't really been done yet. Well, hello, Fate Befalls. Glad to see you here tonight, even if you can't see because you're not wearing your glasses. Haha. So, this is part 2 of this series. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you go back and watch the whole thing maybe 3 or 4 times before you engage with us tonight, or you're just going to be lost. I'm kidding, of course, as we're just kind of chatting tonight, and I'll be talking a lot about the different villages this evening that surround the town of Newcastle, Minnesota. Newcastle will be the central town that the story will be taking place in. The players will be playing as kids who have kind of grown up in this post-apocalyptic world that changed 10 years ago when magic, in the blink of an eye, returned to the world. And not only did magic return, but all these weird fantasy creatures and fantasy races suddenly returned as well, with humans turning into those different races like elves and goblins and gnolls and tieflings, and animals turning into the various creatures. So you might have had a quite lovely golden retriever, but all of a sudden you have a very temperamental manticore to take care of. Or, not take care of because it eats you. In fact, most people didn't make it through the apocalypse. Society collapsed. Now there's only a few pockets of civilization left, and it's kind of taken on a new form. So, as a reminder, Newcastle, Minnesota is a central trading hub along the Mississippi River. It lies about halfway between Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, and Duluth, Minnesota, both of which somewhat survived. The Twin Cities, not really. They didn't really survive. It was just Fort Snelling and a few little settlements that have sprung up over the ensuing 10 years. We went over quite a bit of information about Newcastle last time, and as I'm talking here, please jump in with questions. If you have an idea of how to improve something, let's hear it, because I want to make this world as real and lived in as we possibly can for the players. I, as always, have my tea. Still too hot. Okay. Ow. We've got our music going, which I might change things around a little bit, because this... Ratatouille's Kitchen is what this is called, and it's a little too upbeat. We're going to go ahead and skip that. Okay. That's a little better, I guess. So, the first village we're going to talk about is not Fairbank. Originally, all the towns were going to, instead of being called villages, they're going to be called duns, as a little inspiration, or not inspiration, nod to one of my favorite book series, the Emberverse series by S.M. Sterling, which you haven't read, or if you haven't read it, I recommend it, but it is a very long series at this point. He's been putting out books for the last decade. There's about 13 different books in the series, but it is finished too, which is nice. So that's cool. So Fairbank, which was established in the 4th year after the fall, is a relatively small town, or village, I should say. It is the village that is along the river and is actually responsible for building barges and sending trade goods up and down the river to the Eastern Minnesota Protective Alliance's different partners. So, with that in mind, the river and access to the river and water and fish, all that stuff is very, very, very important to Fairbank. Hello, Neophet. Glad you could make it. Also, hello to Brianna, Killer, Wyatt. Everyone's here. Micah, good to see ya. How we doing? Hopefully well. I'll wait. No, I'm going to keep talking, but when you get your response up there, I'll be sure to respond as well. Wouldn't miss this, Neophet says. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. We are about to get started. You're well glad to hear it. I appreciate you coming back because you had some really good... got my ice cream. Oh, good to go. I thought that was got to go for a second there. I was like, you're ditching this for ice cream? Come on. Mika, I'm really glad you're back because you had some really insightful comments and stuff last time, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say about all this. About to shovel. Oh, I'm sorry, Wyatt. Yeah, there's a lot of snow right now. Neofet says he needs new source material. Okay, well, you're more than welcome to use this for whatever you'd like. Eventually, what I would like to do is pull all these notes and everything into a single file that we can just put out there for other people to use. Ice cream is delicious. Well, certain types of ice cream are delicious. No, all ice cream, actually. Yeah, come to think of it. So, Fairbank is all about the water. And as such, when they were established in the 4th year after the fall, they built everything down on the riverbank. And as you might imagine, that proved to not be the best idea for a number of reasons. First, they were constantly getting raids from across the river, the Whiskey Men. If you remember, the mad, wild people from Wisconsin who have had a complete societal breakdown. They have no cities, no towns or anything. They constantly come over in the dead of the night, and they were raiding that village, taking people, taking supplies. It wasn't a good scene. I am curious, Brianna, what kind of ice cream are you having tonight? Still too hot. What am I doing? It's gonna burn my tongue. They were also having issues as they were sending the barges up and down the waterways with piracy. People who were not as scrupulous. Peppermint bourbon. Peppermint bonbon. Okay, I misread that as peppermint bourbon, and I was intrigued. But peppermint bonbon is also good. They were having issues with river pirates who were commandeering abandoned vessels that they could find and attacking the barges and taking the trade goods and the salvage goods and the food so that they could survive. So the entire Newcastle... I have a drink. It's right here. My up north mug. The entire Newcastle community came together to sort of stamp out these pirates and defend against the Whiskey Men. But the biggest pitfall of building their settlement right next to the water was that most of our waterways in our modern time have dams every so often that's holding back a lot of water to generate electricity. So a lot of our rivers and creeks and stuff, they're not at the level they should be because there's something blocking that water upriver. And as it turns out, yeah, there was something blocking a whole bunch of water upriver. And one night, the dam upriver broke, the town flooded, and a lot of people were killed. Sadly, this was before the establishment of the general school back in Newcastle itself. So, I guess it happened during the day because school was in session in the village on the docks, and unfortunately, a lot of the kids didn't make it. A lot of the townsfolk didn't make it either, but Major tragedy. They thought about relocating the village or just scrapping it entirely. But in the end, they just moved the survivors and a whole bunch of new people up onto the top of some cliffs that overlook the river and rebuilt the docks. However, we got to keep in mind, this is a magical world. And there's a slight problem. I know, very sad incident. There was a slight problem as during the flood, a lot of the people... Ooh, normal school that's a good idea. Normal schools were also teacher colleges for quite a while too, which I know because I had to do a report on them in grad school, so that was fun. During the flood, there were a whole bunch of people that risked their lives, and a lot of them lost their lives too, trying to save everyone who was caught up in the debris. And one of the biggest problems was the first thing that got hit was the building that had been making nets for fishing. And those nets kind of got pushed across everything, caught up a bunch of people in them, and people were trying to free people, but they had no tools to use. They didn't really have access to like any knives or anything. The only thing people were able to find were some scissors, and they were too dull to cut the nets. So a year later, on the anniversary of this disaster, the village has been reestablished up on the cliffs, and weird things start to happen. In fact, ghosts of the people who died in the flood started to appear in the town. Every month on the full moon, there would be a new ghost added to this cadre that would go around essentially terrorizing people, possessing people, and making it, once again, very difficult to live in this village, in this spot. And all of them would appear with nets draped over them. It took some time. It lasted for about a year before a traveling wizard... Yes, wereghosts. It more had to do with the full moon... Well, the ghosts, I suppose, from the warehouses were probably wereghosts, yes. But the full moon was conducting more energy that was allowing them to kind of cross over from essentially purgatory back into the material plane. And a traveling wizard was able to figure out a way how to rid this community of these ghosts. Essentially, the scissors that people had tried to use to cut the nets before were too dull to actually cut the net. So he just sharpened a pair of iron scissors, was able to walk up to one of the ghosts, cut the net, and it released the spirits. So from that day forward, everybody in town carries iron scissors, and it's considered very bad luck to carry dull scissors. Visitors to town that stay at the inn will always find a pair of scissors for each person on their nightstands in case the ghosts show back up. And over the last 5 years or so, they've managed to, they think, get rid of most of the ghosts. But they're not entirely sure if it will ever stop or if they're gone for good. But it was a very tragic event that really shaped how this town behaves. So let's see. So Clarity, how we doing? So we talked about the fact it is situated on bluffs overlooking the river. Scooby, good to have you. Glad to have you here. And the town, in order to help raise goods up to the regular level of the towns and the villages, they have a horse-powered elevator system. Or you can take a kind of switchbacking, long, very rickety staircase to walk up if you want to risk it. The elevator, of course, costs either trade or money of some sort to use. Most people use the elevator because it's much better maintained. That being said, they haven't had anybody fall off the stairs in like a year, so it's probably safe. Probably. Let's see. So, local government, all the villages in the new castle. What about escalators? Now, that would be a feat. I think I mentioned before that Newcastle does have electricity, and that's one of the things that really sets it apart from other little outposts and stuff within the region. But an escalator up about 100-foot cliff face might be a little tricky. So probably not, but that's something to consider. I honestly don't know if the main characters probably have ever encountered an escalator. They probably did back when they were very little, but if they're out exploring some ruins somewhere or something, they might not know what this weird pointy metal stairs that they've encountered. That could be a really cool little scene, actually, especially if it just starts working all of a sudden. So all of the villages have a village elder who kind of sees to local matters, sort of the mayor of the village, but they're called elders. Elders can be either male or female. They can be any race. It is completely out there. It looks like Nightbot is working, and I am not using Pretzel tonight, mainly because for some reason it wasn't actually playing the music. We're on the YouTube audio library tonight, which is all license-free music that we don't have to cite YouTube for supplying, but hey, let's do it. If it is coming in too loud or it's a weird song or something, just, let me know. We can always change stuff. We're doing kind of bright, calm, and happy music, so yeah, get the juices flowing, and I'm going to try this one more time, and I bet you it's going to still be too hot. Nope, that's perfect. I love it. Drinking black tea tonight, so in case anybody else out there wants to join me in a cup. So, the elders kind of deal with local matters, and they tend to be older people within the communities, but that's not necessarily a universal thing. And then there is a captain of the guard, the castle guard, as they're called regionally, a captain of the guard who kind of coordinates the town's militia and town guard, and just making sure everybody's keeping themselves safe. But Fairbank has a third person of importance that is living there, known as the Commodore. And the Commodore is an honorary title given to the person who's in charge of the shipping company. The Commodore originally was a man who just happened to live near where Fairbank was being built and just kind of joined the village by default. And it turns out that he was a hobbyist boat maker and former naval commander. So he just kind of defaulted into the role of helping the town build boats and barges to ply their trade and go fishing and supply the town with food and keep them in good standing within the region. So the Commodore was sort of an honorary thing. Unfortunately, about a year ago, the Commodore was murdered. It was a very shocking thing to have happen, but somebody straight up murdered the Commodore. An investigation was launched, and nobody could figure out what was going on. They actually had to bring in some special... Legasp, indeed. Some specialists to try to solve it, and it turns out the reason it wasn't getting solved was the person who was responsible was the captain of the guard. Dun dun dun, indeed. Ha! Didn't see that coming. The captain fled. Instead of standing trial, he fled across the river into Wisconsin and has not been seen or heard from since. So everybody has just kind of presumed that the whiskey men probably got him. Probably. A month after his death, the community elected the Commodore's nephew to replace him. What were his motives for killing them? Oh, that is a good question. It came down to money. It turns out that the captain had been a part of the criminal syndicate within the town, or the greater Newcastle area, called, I think we said the family, but I know we came up with something better than that last week. So if you remember what it was, post that in the chat here. But the Commodore was threatening to put a stop to their smuggling operations, and he couldn't have that, so he just decided to kill him and try to replace him with somebody a bit more compliant. So, the town council does not officially recognize the office of the Commodore, although it is a very important one to the community, and there's a lot of people who do recognize it as a position of authority, possibly even more than the captain, especially more than the captain for this village now, or the elder. So that's fun. This is a really dark village, and I'm just kind of coming to that conclusion now that I'm talking about it, because we have a whole bunch of dead, drowned villagers who are coming back as ghosts. We had a murder all within the first, 2 paragraphs of this town's introduction. So, yay! Haha. Whoops. So politics. The main factions from Newcastle all have a presence here, but the New World and stand-up parties have the largest share of the village's population, which are the ones that really believe in kind of leaning into this new world. They think that there is a point to magic, that it can be used as a tool, but they also want to use technology, because a lot of the boats, while a lot of the barges are made new specifically for trade, a lot of the fishing boats and pleasure boats and stuff that are docked in the village are just old world boats that have been really well maintained over the last 10 years. Let's see. So the river runners, that is what the trade company that moves goods up and down the river is called. It's the River Runners Trading Company. They hold a lot of political sway within the village, and actually within the town itself, because it's the main supply line and main line of communication with the outside world. There's a little bit of radio and stuff, long distance, got another Nightbot test going. But yeah, the River Runners have a lot of political sway. Town council, usually anything that's going to affect them, they get the okay from the River Runners before they introduce it, just to make sure they don't ruffle any feathers, because they don't want them to stop, running goods up and down the river. They don't want to cut off the town's economy. Let's see. The river marks the eastern... Oh, that one didn't work for some reason. Weird. The river marks the eastern boundary of Newcastle. Beyond it lies the boundless and wild forests of old Wisconsin, which invites some disorder to the doorstep of the village. There are trappers and traders that cross the river, in addition to the whiskey men themselves, sort of independents who live in the wilds, and essentially the old French fur traders who come in and trade pelts and stuff for supplies. It might have a timeout. We're a very young channel, folks, and we're still getting used to all of the bots and tech and stuff. But yeah, everything's going great. So yeah, the town is the only one on the eastern edge of the territory, along the river there. So because of that, I don't like this. There we go. They're the only ones along the eastern edge of the territory. So they take the brunt of the raids from across the river, And in order to sort of curtail this somewhat, the castle guard has established a whole bunch of outposts along the length of the river, running all the way up to headwater, where the river starts, and where a town has been established by the Duluth Union for trading. From there, you have to go overland up to Duluth, but it's not that far. And then all the way down to the ruins of the Twin Cities, they have these little outposts that are staffed by Castle Guard. And it's not necessarily the most enjoyable assignment for Castle Guard. Most people don't volunteer for it. But there's about 30 of these little outposts that the barges can stop at, resupply, rest, and then continue on their way. That they have these little garrisons at to make sure that the whiskey men don't, raid their little shore camp or something as they're traveling. So the outposts are a little boring until they're not, and you're always on edge when you're on the eastern side of the river, and you're just super bored when you're on the western bank. So, okay. Let's see. Crime, as mentioned, the family does a lot of smuggling over the river. Mainly, they're smuggling alcohol, moonshine. There are some microbrewers and one more industrial brewer within Newcastle, but there's a lot of tax on creating alcohol and supplying it within the town, as it's an easily tracked and taxed thing. So the family is essentially offering an alternative to that at a cheaper rate, and the town guard, the castle guard, are definitely not. Nightbot, stop spamming caps. Uh-oh. I don't think she meant anything by it. Nightbot, Nightbot is very vigilant. I apologize. That would do it. What were you trying to say? So as we get that message typed in here, Nightbot takes the rules very seriously. Oh, that's right. It was something like Castle... Oh gosh, what was it? Well, it's in the previous video. I can always go back and watch it, so we'll have to do that. I probably should have done that before tonight, but just didn't really have time. Let's see here. So, yeah. The to-be-named criminal organization, we do have the recording, yes, smuggles stuff across the river. They usually do this on a monthly basis on the new moon, so it's hard to see. And they do bribe the Scout Division, which is the part of the Castle Guard who patrol sort of the wild spaces. They're essentially the rangers for the town. And they give them free liquor or money to look the other way as they're transporting the goods. They also tend to bring some of the normal school students with them to try to give them a little bit more legitimacy. Because if there's kids and, it looks like it's sort of a family traveling across the territory, they're probably okay, right? You're not going to have to search their wagon and see if they've got contraband booze. That's not something that happens. So that is one of the things that any enterprising youths from the normal school could potentially be involved in. So if we have somebody that's more prone to being a rogue, doing a moonshine run, as they call it, would definitely something that could be in their backstory. Kids don't drink. Don't be... You know what? Kids definitely do. And there's actually an abandoned water park not far from this particular village that most of the kids in the area have sort of turned into the hangout spot. And I think I mentioned it last time. They think the adults don't know about it, but they actually do, and send through the scouts every once in a while to make sure nothing has kind of made a home in the water park. So, kids don't drink legally, but they do sadly. That is, yes, very correct. We do not condone underage drinking. I just want to be very clear about that. I don't want to make an after-school special about it or anything, but it does happen. The youth culture in this area, it happens. Especially since the senior and graduating class is all between the ages of 17 and 20, due to the fact that the school wasn't established till a few years after the fall, and they kind of just lumped everybody who had missed a few years together into the same class. So yeah, the kids are all right. They go to the water park once or twice a month. They usually have a group of musicians that plays music. They socialize, they screw around. It's just good, clean fun. I'm imagining that they have some of the mage students. Are your videos on Twitch anywhere? I was going to quick check and see if I could find the name. I mean, they should be in our video on demand stuff. If not, I did a hard copy recording, so it should be there, but that was a couple weeks ago, and we've had a lot of stuff. Highlighted section. Thank you, Brianna. So I picture that for these parties, one of the things that happens is there's old speed slides at this water park, and the kids race each other on those by having a couple of the magic users create water and, getting the water slide going and then seeing who can get down the fastest. Just seems like a fun thing. There's probably other stupid dares and stuff there as well. And I would imagine probably some wild magic stuff that's really drawing them to it. Unfortunately, every once in a while, a monster or goblins or something will make their home in the water park, and that kind of, that'll put a damper on anybody's good time. So you don't want to be wading into the wave pool when there's the Loch Ness Monster in there or anything, right? Or maybe you do. I don't know. Live your life. So, yeah, the family smuggles moonshine, and they bribe the scout division to look the other way. All right. So, military-wise, we already talked about that a little bit. But this is one of the biggest sections of the Castle Guard, because they have dispersed not just within town, but all the way up and down the river, too, in order to protect their shipments and... Ooh, no. There we go. That's better. In order to better protect the shipments. In addition to all of the people who are stationed at the outposts, they do send people from the Marine Division along with each of the ships, too. We are testing Nightbot for a couple of things for our other show as well. So, if you are not familiar with Moto the Renegade or Wendella Jamjar, they're characters from the World's Greatest Dungeon, which is on Wednesday nights. If you want to see how it is when I run a game, it's the one that I run on this channel, so that's fun. There's also some of the Castle Guard in town, but that's actually just a small part of the overall deployment here. Oof, that's everybody. But they have to deal with river pirates, they're having to deal with the Whiskey Men and bandits and goblins, and it's a lot. There's no defensive wall, so... Quick question about the military. How are troops of the military obtained? Through conscription or voluntary enlistment? Very good question, Killer. They are all voluntary. The Castle Guard is the most popular career track for people graduating from the normal school. In fact, when you're about 3 years out from graduation, you are sat down and you have to decide what career path you want to pursue. And most kids go with, you know what? I think I want to be part of the Castle Guard because, you know, there's sort of a cool factor attached to it, and sort of a bit of honor and prestige within the community too, because you're keeping people safe, and you don't always have to be working the farms or the mine or the wood, the lumber mill. So the Castle Guard is completely voluntary. They all train at a different village that we'll get to in a little bit. That one's called, let's see if I can look it up here. Dayton, Jefferson, Cinda, Pine Guard, which will actually be the last village we talk about. But yeah, that's the Castle Guard. Defense, there is a gate and wall on the river bluffs that the stairs and the elevator both lead to. And in order to get into the town from the river, you gotta go through this gate. And when you're down below and looking up, it looks really imposing, like there's this big fortress up there in the woods. When you get up there, it is literally just a little stone wall that has been sort of designed with a little bit of forced perspective to make it look more imposing, in order to try to keep away pirates and raiders and stuff from the community. There's a little bit of a bastion there that the Castle Guard who are stationed within Fairbank live in and kind of socialize and stuff from. But yeah, it's called the River Gate. Commerce, towns made trade as the port. Barges are loaded and unloaded. They also do a good amount of fishing, though fish has actually been a little bit hard to come by lately. There's been a severe reduction in the amount of fish available to the community, and they've been having to go a little further afield. And there's rumors that something in the water is cutting the nets and keeping the fish out of the nets. So there's all these rumors swirling about some sort of aquatic people that are messing with the town, and a lot of tensions lately. It's mainly a trade-based economy. There's not a lot of special shops or stuff in town, but there is a hostel attached to the local pub that's called the Fish's Fancy. It serves as a town's inn and has several nicer rooms for dignitaries. And yes, Clarity, there is very good potential that it's mermaids. Or, it could be Sahagwins, it could be just about anything, Something that lives in the water. It could just be mudskippers. I don't know. Very big mudskippers with knives. Are firearms still active or rare? They are active, they're not as effective as they used to be. They don't pack as much punch because one of the things that happened when the fall occurred was explosives kind of were reduced in the amount of force they produced. While guns are not rare, you can within this region, if you go and scavenge a building that hasn't been scavenged yet, you'll probably find a gun in it. Ammunition, on the other hand, is hard to come by. The town has a stockpile of ammunition, and while people are allowed to own weapons and firearms within the community, once they're out of ammo, they're out of ammo. There's not really a way to make more. There's not really a way to get more. There is one family at one of the other villages who does firearm repair and makes ammunition for the guard, but they don't make it for private sale. So that's the limiting factor. Now that's not a big deal to outside forces who are raiding, because they often will have firearms with maybe just a couple bullets in them, which, you don't know how many shots they got. And one of the most dangerous things you could probably imagine would be goblins with assault rifles, which will come up eventually. They might. There might be a backdoor thing going on with the ammo, but they're a pretty honorable family. They definitely want the town to thrive and survive, and they tend to keep it all very on the level. Now, what the guard is doing, that's another fact entirely. As we already covered, the scout division is getting bribed to let whiskey get run from Wisconsin over to the town. So there could be people within the guard who are also selling ammunition. However, the kids from this school don't get trained with guns. They do get trained with pikes, crossbows, short swords, and shields. So everybody in the town is expected to be able to defend themselves at least a little bit, and they all have training with those 4 implements. If you're part of the Guard Auxiliary, which is sort of like the youth that are going to go into being castle guards eventually, they get training with firearms, long swords, and bows, in addition to the others. Yes, gun gobos. Oof. And yeah, why use a gun when you can just cast Fireball? To that end, magic users are all very fresh within this world. There is, especially within town, they're still figuring it out. It's only been 10 years since magic returned, and some people are, they're pretty good at it. But most people can maybe cast a couple spells and, little cantrips, essentially, for using Dungeons & Dragons terms. Fireball is not one that a lot of people can do yet. But, if there's a wizard out there that can, they're probably going to get recruited to be an adventurer. So, but yeah, it doesn't... a pistol doesn't seem like much of a match against somebody who can cast Fireball. All right. So the village is fully electrified, but they tend to only use that for lights. Stoves tend to be wood burning. They have retrofitted a lot of stuff. They are using some power for the forge to heat it electrically, but overall they're trying not to draw on the grid too much because they have to run electrical lines to all these different villages and the town. Fridge and freezer, yes, absolutely. Most homes have that, or at least somebody within their block has one, and everybody just kind of uses that. One of the nice things about Newcastle is nobody goes hungry. Everybody contributes in some way. So they make sure that nobody goes hungry. Found the previous video. The Newcastle Consortium, or the Blumenfields. That's right, because the Blumenfelds were an organized crime family from the Twin Cities. And a lot of the little references and stuff in the other villages, it's a lot of people who survived from the Twin Cities and made it here. Isidore Blumenfeld. Yes, that is correct. The Newcastle Consortium. Thank you very much, Scooby, for going back and finding that. I feel bad that I wasn't able to be bothered to do that, but is there a town drunk? I mean, probably. It would usually be up to the elder to try to curtail that, though, as generally that sort of behavior would lead to people not contributing or to the fullest extent within the community. So they would probably try to stop people from being town drunks. Let's see. They are planning to build a hydroelectric plant down by the docks, but this keeps getting shelved for other projects. So that is something that's in the works eventually, but right now the lumber mill is the community's primary focus. So, There's also a couple of water-powered manufacturing plants or factories that are churning out scales and rings for armor within the community, and repairing barges for the river runners. With using tools that need a little bit more juice, they're using water power to power those tools. They're the taste testers. Yes, that's the town drunks. They're classy drunks. They're not the old Cletus or something. What is the town ratio of species? How many humans, elves, dwarves? So that actually is a very good question. Newcastle itself, because it was about a 60% change in the population globally, the number of humans is actually a minority within the village, or within all the villages except one, and the town itself. The primary racial makeup that you're going to see are humans, elves, dwarves, halflings, and then a bunch of other sort of miscellaneous random things. You will not find any goblins in town, or hobgoblins, bugbears, any goblinoid creature. They kind of hit the road and headed up to Duluth after the Goblin Wars in the first couple years of the fall. As a reminder, the Goblin Wars, there was a band of goblins and gnolls who started capturing townsfolk and eating them because they couldn't find another way to eat. So that got put down with the help of some adventurers. Getting that worked out. Okay. This village is very similar to the makeup of the town itself. Some humans, some elves, some dwarves, just a very cosmopolitan makeup. One of the next villages we will talk about is almost exclusively human. Yes, Jorgensen is 98% human. There is a mage who lives within Fairbank. They are part of an adventuring party who kind of saved the village during the Foundation Wars back in the first and second years after the fall. And they are very private, but they occasionally will take on students as a mentor to them. And they specialize in protective magic. So creating shields and charms to help people keep safe. Religion. There's a small Lutheran church in the village that is the primary faith center in town. Attendance has been lagging in recent years, though. The bulk of the town has sort of adopted an agnostic outlook on the world, but there is a small and secret cult dedicated to someone called Andalin, who they claim is the river goddess. They believe that the river goddess was reawakened by the fall, and they are worshiping her to appease her and make sure that all their travel along the river is safe. So there is essentially a cult to the river goddess located secretly somewhere within the town. Culture and superstition. We kind of talked about this a little bit with the incident of the Great Flood that happened very early within the village's history. And that's why everybody carries sharpened iron scissors. In fact, the village elder will often stop, particularly youth, and double check that their scissors are sharp, because they don't want anything happening that's bad. Let's see. Noticeable gaps in ages because of the flood. Everybody else is sent to the normal school. They have the same general clubs that you would find with the kids from town. But there's also a couple of special clubs within the community for the kids. One, of course, is the Junior River Runners, who aspire to eventually work the barges and run trade up and down. And those are the kids that usually hang out down by the docks, and they think that boats are really cool. They race boats and stuff. It's all in good fun. The other kind of youth group is more your posh society, who a social club, if you will, kind of the more popular kids in town. Points of interest. There's the ruins of the old town, which are still under the water. Some people do dive down into those and try to recover stuff, but it is kind of taboo. Homemakers and humans. I would actually imagine they probably play D&D, which is more like our modern, world than anything else. They probably play D&D, I would say. The pond, not actually a pond. It's a area that they flood every fall, and then when the winter comes, they have an ice skating rink. So there is a thriving hockey scene in town. A couple of local sort of community teams that face off against each other. Essentially beer league hockey. Let's see. River Runners Trading Company. Oh, Page's Tomb. The Commodore has a very fancy tomb that they made for him in the center of town. Let's see. Warehouses. Fisher's Fancy. The Sailor's Hammer is the local smith who primarily works on parts for boats. Kids on Bikes or Werewolf or even Call of Cthulhu would be more of the RPG. Yeah, I mean, they even play Monopoly. It's our world, and salvagers go, they hit game stores, they bring back games for them to play. They're probably more expensive than they are now because there's no new copies of Monopoly being made. Let's see. The Portside Power Company is the group that's trying to get the hydroelectric factory built. And they have an office, and that is literally all they have. It's like 3 people who are constantly soliciting the town council to try to get them to invest in their project and just cannot seem to catch a break. What happened to the Mall of America? That is a very good question, Neofet. We did discuss that last time, but to recap, the Mall of America is still there. There is a settlement from the Fort Snelling, or the Knights of Snelling as they call themselves now, nearby it. And they occasionally will go in there and salvage and scavenge. But it's also a very large structure, and a number of monsters have already made their home there. And yes, there is in fact a cult living there. It is in fact, yes, Clarity, a mega dungeon, and it might play into something that'll happen in the first season of After the Fall. We'll see, because it's really going to be up to the players which direction they want to take it. But if the players want to go to the Mall of America, I have plans. It might involve IKEA. I don't know. I do know. Recent events. The Fairwater Fair, I suppose that should be the Fairbank Fair, is going to happen at the start of summer. So when we start the show, it'll be about a month before these kids are graduating. Your dad helped build the IKEA. That's really cool. Maybe that's where the cult is. I'm not sure. So the Fairbank Fair is sort of a local community tradition. Everybody comes from all the villages to the area. There's music, there's dancing, there's socializing. There's a lumberjack days kind of competitions where people are doing log roll competitions and tree climbing competitions and stuff. But yeah, it's the cult of IKEA, yes. I think that needs an IKEA name, though. The Kultik. I don't know. Please don't get mad at me, Sweden. The Meatball Cult. Oh, that has a nice ring to it, actually. The holy symbol is an Allen wrench. Yes. Yes, there we go. Well, now it has to happen because we've spent time on it. You know what? We're going to say there is at least the rumor that there is a strange cult that has taken hold in the old IKEA across from the Mall of America, known as the Meatball Cult, and their holy symbol is an Allen wrench. That is the rumor that people in town 100% believe. Whether or not that's true, we'll find out when they go there. Let's see, rumors of mermaids. Yep, we got that. The New Moon Whiskey Run. Yep, we got that. The Moonshine Run. And then there are some whispers that the old captain who killed the Commodore is still alive and raising an army of whiskey men to raid the village. Whether or not that's true, I mean, it's suspect, because who would actually have brought that information back? But the rumors persist. Now, how do you pronounce that? Is it Kitzbühel? I think? I don't know. Let's see. The log roll games, do other towns journey? They do journey to play in those games, Neophet. Very good question. It's sort of an inter-community fair. The Fairbank community hosts it because it's always been held there. But it kind of reminds everybody that, oh yeah, you wouldn't really have all this if it wasn't for Fairbank. We're important too. So yeah. And there's also another... yes, the Canadian elves do compete in it as well. There is also another fair in the midsummer, kind of mid-July, that the town itself hosts, and that's sort of the big fair that everybody will take time off and go to. Because at that point, the crops are harvested, or not harvested, they're planted, they're growing, there's not much work to do with those, so you got your livestock you got to take care of, but there's a lot of like livestock competitions and stuff at that point. And then there's also the harvest fair that the town hosts too. After all the crops have been harvested, they host one last shindig for the year that is essentially Halloween. So, yeah. I think that about covers it for Fairbank. Any final questions before we move on to Jorgensen? Okay. Seeing none. We're going to move on to Jorgensen, which was the first community established apart from Newcastle, the first village. The tea is lukewarm, but still very pleasant. Thank you for asking. It lost heat very quickly after it was finally cool enough to drink. Jorgensen is the westernmost settlement, has a lot of issues with bandits. People raiding their community from the west, kind of out towards the no man's land between them and Fargo. They were the first community to have issues with goblin raids. Let's see. Located 6 miles west of Newcastle, village is primarily focused on crops, so they have a lot of grain, corn, beans that they grow for the community, and the majority of it actually gets shipped up to Duluth or down to the Twin Cities. The center point of the village is an old farm, which has sort of been expanded quite a bit. Most people live near to the farm because there's strength in community and in numbers. There are some people who are trying to establish smaller settlements that are also kind of like little fortified farms now, because it's just massive amounts of farm fields. 98% of the population in Jorgensen are human. Now, other races are allowed to live there, but they're given a kind of a prickly or icy welcome. They are not treated with much respect within the Jorgensen community. Jorgensen was primarily established by people from town who didn't like the fact that there were people who are now elves and dwarves running around, and kind of wanted to go back to the way things were before the fall. So they've established their own community that is kind of human isolationists. Essentially, yes, Clarity. They definitely are. In fact, there is a group, a poorly kept secret within the town called the Human League, who kind of believes that humans should be in charge. Does this mean they do not condone any magic too? They don't, actually. The political faction that believes in technology and no magic, which is, the name is escaping me right now, but it's kind of the old world party. they hold a lot of sway here. So people who are gifted with magic, they tend to not live there anymore. There's at least one kid at the normal school who their parents live in Jorgensen and they live with an adopted family in another town because they can do magic. So Jorgensen is not the most welcoming community, but it is an important one because they grow 90% of the crops for the community and for trade. So kind of hard to crack down on that. Let's see. The Human League is actually run by one of the lieutenant stationed at the community for the Castle Guard. Not the captain. The captain actually recently moved to the area and is trying to make it better, trying to improve it. And the lieutenant is constantly undermining them, and there seems to be nothing they can do about it. The lieutenant is sort of in charge of the community. There's an elder, too, but they defer to the lieutenant in most everything. They're known as the American Party. That's the political faction. They're very dependent on fossil fuels to run agricultural equipment. They have a... Is there any particular reason why they have problems with bandits and goblins? They're sort of on the outskirts of the Newcastle region. They're the furthest west, and between Newcastle and Fargo, there are some little towns and settlements, but nothing big. And for about 100 miles, there's not really much of anything except monsters, bandits, and goblins. So it's the least it was the least defended, easiest place for them to hit early on during the raids. So that's the reason. They're just kind of on the outskirts. But they wanted to get away from town. They definitely got it. Let's see. So yeah, petrol is very important to this community. They get a primary dibs, essentially, on any petrol that's rescued or imported. And they have created not a full-blown factory to create gasoline, but they have a refinery that is very precarious and could just blow up at any moment. So that is kind of on the very edge of town, and there's a certain pride within the community of being brave enough to live there with that refinery, maybe not as safe as it could be. That being said, it's been in operation for 7 years and there hasn't been a problem. So what are the odds? Something could go boom any day now. They also, let's see, Castle Guard who patrol. This is gonna skip that. There we go. That was very out of place. The Castle Guard that are stationed here, they have to put a lot of miles on. There's a rotation. Not many stay in the village proper. Odds seem pretty good and higher every day. That is correct, yes. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. So every day that odds, yes, increase. And the odds do go up when adventurers arrive. Not a lot of adventurers come to Jorgensen. So the soldiers have to travel a lot. Not many are actually stationed in the village itself, and that's kind of by design of the lieutenant who's running the Human League and assigning the patrol routes. They keep their core supporters within town, and then anybody who's new or hasn't really been vetted yet gets sent out on a routine patrol every week that goes 5 days on, 2 days off. And they go from farm to farm to farm with all these little settlements staying at one and then moving to the next in order to ensure that they're being protected and are being kept safe. Those farms each kind of have their own little barracks for the castle guard. And some are nicer than others. Some of the farms do not like the castle guard at all, and especially because the castle guard does not care who they send to Jorgensen. It is not just humans. It's whoever they have that can go. However, I will say elves, dwarves, and halflings tend to try to get reassigned pretty quickly. Let's see, what else? Crime, oddly, this is the only village that the Bloomfelds do not have a presence in. They stay away from it due to very aggressive guards. Internet's being stupid, stream keeps stuttering. Is anybody else having that problem? My connection here looks stable. Let's see. So yeah, they tend to leave Jorgensen alone. There's not much point because they're the only ones out to the west. There's only so much trade they can have. So, sorry, Clarity. It does look like it's your internet. I hope it gets fixed soon here. If not, I can try to stutter my responses so that it, catches up with the breaks. But I have a feeling people wouldn't like that. Let's see. We already talked about the military. Oh, they actually are the main motor pool location. So any service vehicles for the castle guard or for the town itself, this is where they're maintained, housed, repaired. There are rumors that they have a tank, but nobody has been able to substantiate that. And there's really not much use they would have with a tank if they did have one, unless maybe like a dragon shows up or something. The motor pool is known as the Stronghold, and the engineering division of the Castle Guard has a detachment there that maintains all the stuff and improves it and fixes it. Let's see. There's no formal wall around the village or any of the duns or those fortified farms. Lots of watchtowers, though. And they also have a heliograph, the hot air balloon on a tether that they relay messages with mirrors and light. Let's see. Things have been a lot more peaceful lately. Monster attacks are down. Raids are down. Nobody's really sure why. Everybody's getting a little bit on edge because there hasn't been a raid recently. There hasn't been a monster that just showed up and started wrecking the place. It's been a very peaceful year. Let's see. Commerce. So Duns, the little fortified farms we mentioned, they're always seeking skilled crafters. Each kind of has a farrier, at least at this point, to kind of help with the farm animals. A lot of weaving operations, but they all kind of want to outdo each other. And that has led to Jorgensen very aggressively recruiting skilled craftspeople from other settlements, again, so long as they're human. Which has led to some very talented people being completely passed over. Not that they would probably want to go there. Let's see. Village doesn't really boast much in the way of markets. It does have a general store and a salvage shop. The salvage shop deals almost exclusively in old world art. They have a granary. Lots of warehouses for storing the grain that's going to be shipped away. And a dance hall for community gatherings that also serves as the main Lutheran church for the area. So. Now this music seems more appropriate. Technology. Most Duns have at least one pickup truck and trailer rig to transport their goods from their part of the fields and into town. A lot of them have agricultural equipment. Having an automobile pretty much anywhere in Newcastle, if you have a car, it's a huge status symbol. The Stronghold, the engineering core, does maintain at least one helicopter, though it does not get much use because why would they use it? And also, aircraft has a tendency to attract flying creatures, like, wyvern, dragons, griffins, that really don't like the fact that something else is flying and making a lot of noise. Magic, as we already said, there's almost no magic users within town. There are some clerics that have recently taken up residency, and they are tolerated, though not really fully embraced. Let's see. Going over my notes. This is the end of my typed up notes, so now I have to go to my handwritten stuff, which will be less cohesive. A lot of the villages do have. Everyone loves the healers. Yes, exactly. They have healing magic, so that's kind of why they're tolerated. Is okay, you can mend these things that the doctors really can't fix, and you can do it very quickly and get them back to work. So okay, we'll let you stay, but none of that weird like fire magic or anything. Weirdos. Most of the settlements have some sort of cemetery or graveyard built into the settlement. Jorgensen actually has theirs built further west of the settlement, and to get there, it's a very winding and non-direct path. And there's a very good reason for that. Back in the early days, during the goblin raids, during the monster years when they were having a lot of problems with that, there were issues with, they had a very straight path, very close graveyard. There were issues with creatures coming and digging up the dead and then attacking the town because they ran out of food. So the winding path to and from the cemetery serves the purpose of kind of throwing anything that would be following people back to the village off the track and losing them in the wilds. So that is the purpose of that, and a local superstition at this point because there hasn't been a goblin attack in a while. Let's see. Recent news, a farmer was injured in a threshing accident. The town is taking up collections for his family. And there was recently an earthquake. The earthquake was not felt back in town or at any other village. It was very local, and it brought down some of the buildings. There is no reason that people think it was anything other than a natural earthquake, but there are some rumors that there's some sort of big burrowing beast that's been harassing some of the farms and destroying crops. So there may be a call to adventure from Jorgensen. All right. That kind of covers them. Any questions on Jorgensen? I know that one went a lot quicker, but we didn't get as off track with other things, too. As anybody is typing in their questions, just a reminder for anybody who is just joining us here, we are discussing the world of After the Fall, which will be a new show on this channel within the next couple months. The world that it takes place in, utilizing the cipher system instead... Yes, more like Jorgensen. The world it takes place in is utilizing the cipher system. It is a post-apocalyptic / fantasy setting because the apocalypse came in the blink of an eye when magic returned to the world. And the fantasy races that we all know and love from Dungeons & Dragons surged back into existence as humans, so that 60% of them turned into those different creatures. Animals, conversely, turned into fantasy monsters for the, good or ill. It has been an interesting 10 years since that all happened, and now the Newcastle region, which is what we're discussing, they are sort of making the best of it as they are trying to make it day to day. The characters and players will actually be kids who grew up in this world, and the first generation graduating from what we've now dubbed the normal school, and choosing to go off into the world for adventures. So that will be fun. So, yes, and Brandon, thank you very much for posting the Discord. We do have a Discord that we discuss this sort of stuff on. We also discuss all our other shows on there. We have all sorts of fun memes and content you can engage with the cast. And we'll have game nights and stuff coming up soon, too, that we'll be recruiting people to join in on. So that'll be fun. But, yeah, join our Discord. We're a lot of fun. At least I like to think we are. Let's see. Yay, no more standards. That is true. There are no standardized tests anymore. It's all essays. It's all short answer and long answer form tests. So you might miss the Scantrons after a while. Let's see. Is there a barbarian running around with a sun sword, with a sorceress, and a large creature brute? I don't know what that's referring to. I have a feeling that once I hear it, I will know. But, Neophet, if you can be a bit more specific, I would appreciate it. Speaking of barbarians, yeah, there are little tribes of barbarians and stuff. Basically, anybody who's in a community that's outside of the Eastern Minnesota Protective Alliance is kind of considered to be a barbarian. Thundar the Barbarian cartoon from the 80s. Yeah, nope. Thundar is sadly not running around, at least in this region. I suspect he would be probably more out in the American Southwest there. So, but maybe he exists. There could be rumors from the far travelers who are trying to crisscross the country in the apocalypse. So, yeah, let's talk about Dayton. So Dayton was founded just after Jorgensen. It is kind of west-northwest of town, so not quite as far away as Jorgensen is from the town, and sort of between it and the most northerly direction there. It was established almost exclusively by refugees from the Twin Cities, so lots of non-humans. How are elections held paper? It is kind of a moot situation where the 4th of July, there are elections, local and regional, for candidates and electing representatives into the town council. Each village gets one representative, and the town itself has 3. And yeah, it's all kind of local elections that establish policy for the region. So. The elder is not an elected position. It just tends to be somebody that defaults to it in the community. So. But good question. Sadly, there are no electronic voting machines. But it is not paper ballots. It's raise your voice, raise your glass, and all that. So Dayton, like I said, established by refugees from the Twin Cities, lots of non-humans. And they've had a lot of conflict with Jorgensen for some reason, as their nearest neighbor. Weird. I don't know why. It's just kind of something that happened. This conflict has escalated into clashes between the communities, but it's never anything that can actually be, like, proven. The guards kind of look the other way or are ordered to go somewhere else for the day as members of the community duke it out or have a little scuffle along their borders. The founder of Dayton died in a skirmish with the goblins, and they almost lost the entire village as a result, because one person was really holding it together, but their wife stepped up and kind of filled in the gap and managed to keep the town running. Just realized you said animals transformed into fantasy monsters. Yes, including all the pets. Your cat could have turned into a displacer beast. Yikes. Yes, but Jorgen seems like such a nice town. They're not. Gotta have a villain, right? Farmland. The majority of the area is farmland. They have some woods. Then they have a lot of crops, but their main thing that they're known for is sheep. There's a lot of shepherds in Dayton. Crop yields are down right now too. There's some sort of blight, and there is a buffer forest between Jorgensen and Dayton at this point because they don't. It's kind of keeping the peace. They don't cross that. But they're really worried, and there's a lot of voices in Jorgensen saying that they need to go and burn the crops of Dayton because there's this blight that could spread into their region too. They're very worried. They also, just don't like Dayton. They are wary of outsiders, but are mostly friendly once they get to know you. The community is usually quite prosperous, so there's very little internal crime. Though the Bloomfelds definitely have a presence here. I have no idea what their presence is. It's mainly sheep and crops and a little bit of timber. I guess wool trade is really good this time of year. There's a few places of worship, but most people in the area are not of the faithful. There is a Lutheran church. There's also a small mosque in this settlement. So there is a small minority of Muslims within the community. There is an amphitheater that serves as the main gathering place for the village, and they've actually created a very large canvas cover for the winter so they can still use it. But during the summertime, there's a lot of plays and stuff that get reenacted, concerts where people who play instruments in the area come and perform for some money. There's an herbalist in the area who runs a shop. There's also a jeweler. So a lot of old world jewelry gets salvaged and brought back into the community. They buy a lot of costume jewelry and they enchant it. So they have an enchantment wizard who is selling different charms and stuff that appears to just be costume jewelry. There's an upcoming election. I guess the elders, according to my notes, are elected. There's two candidates who are vying for the community's support. One's a traditionalist and kind of the incumbent. The other is the reform candidate and thinks that Dayton could see some changes that would improve it. Another recent thing. A taxman has gone missing. A patrol of guards had their leader, who was in charge of collecting taxes, kind of wander off and vanished. There's also been some missing children from the town recently. So there's a lot of people are on edge. Superstitions. Chickens can be used to cure most ailments, much to the dismay of the herbalist. Yes, the taxman, not the kids. Absolutely. Seems like some justice there. There is a local superstition that I know. I got a lot of missing kids and dead kids in this world, but it was the apocalypse, so it's been getting better, though. And those kids might still be alive. We don't know. They're looking for them. Maybe the players will have some part in rescuing them. But yeah, there's a local superstition. Nobody really knows where it came from, but it's believed that chickens can be used to cure just about anything. Scryer Vision 2. Okay, alright, so one episode of one arc of Scryer Vision had missing kids. And most of them came back alive, except the one that y'all murdered. So, granted, you didn't know it was one of the kids at the time, but could save him. Scryer Vision is kind of a dystopia. I mean, kinda. Yeah, it's a magical reality TV show in a world that has gladiatorial combat, so and the losers of the reality show get disintegrated. So, blood sport. There's a haunted house that was the site of the battle where a major battle during the God War. I'm not sure what you're asking what to, Neophet. Was the comment that Scryer Vision is kind of a dystopia, or the, kids that were missing in the Scryer Vision episode? Let's see. There's also been some recent wildfires, which may or may not have been caused by Jorgensen. And there's been a lot of wolf sightings recently. So that's fun. Yeah, there was one that got killed by one of the Scryer Vision player characters, but they thought it was basically it was a homunculus at the time. They didn't realize it was the kids. So, not really their fault. More the fault of the hag that transformed the children into little abominations, but the others survived, so that was good. I think that was episode, Arc 2, if I'm not mistaken. And that kind of wraps it up for Dayton so far. Does anybody have any questions or comments or things they think might improve the sheep herding community of Dayton? We're going to move on to Jefferson next. Brianna might be able to back me up on that one too, because that was the Grandma Betty, the Annis hag. Was the blight... more accurate to ask, is the blight magical in nature? And the answer seems to be yes, because they can't figure out what's causing it. So that might be another thing the players have to take care of. All right. I think the crime syndicate would be interested in the magical blight. That could be. What would their interest be in the blight, though, I wonder? Like an extortion kind of thing? If they can harness it to threaten farmers that if they don't give them some of their crops, they're going to make all their crops disappear or something? Let's see. The next settlement is the northernmost settlement and the farthest one from town at 10 miles out, Jefferson. Jefferson is located near an old quarry. So this settlement was established in the 6th year after the fall. The original settlement of Jefferson was established at the same time as Dayton and Jorgensen, almost immediately after the establishment of Newcastle. But Jefferson, the original Jefferson, was completely wiped out during the Goblin Wars. Either people fled the community and wouldn't return, or the goblins got them. So, not a good time. They reestablished the town 6 years after the fall. So there was a 4-year gap where the town was just an abandoned ruin. But they came back, and the main reason they came back was because of the quarry and an old mine near the settlement. So Jefferson is kind of responsible for metals and stone and stuff for the town. There's been some issues recently with bandits on the road, and they are trying to create their own roadway to Headwater in order to sort of bypass the need to ship their stuff over the river routes and kind of cut Fairbanks out of the deal. Now, obviously, the River Running Trading Company, they don't like that, so they're trying to throw up roadblocks and stuff as much as they can and prevent Jefferson from being able to complete this project that would potentially create a new overland trade route that would cut them out of a lot of revenue. So, as we previously mentioned, mining is not a huge thing. Mainly because there's all these ruins all over the world, and a lot of the people who are looking for metals, you just go tear down a house. You're gonna get a bunch of metals, strip a car bare. You're gonna get a bunch of metals that they can use just as well as they could if they brought stuff up from the earth. So the mine is not being operated by the town. The quarry is, because they need the stone. That's a little bit harder to salvage in this area. But the mine is actually being operated by a group from the Duluth Union. It was kind of sold to the Duluth Union as a major trade between the two communities, and they've been given mining rights to it. So they have a little outpost just outside of Jefferson that stereotypically almost completely staffed with dwarves. Don't know what it is, not intentional, just they all happen to be dwarves. Let's see. 2 years ago, the town elder, it was discovered they were doing something evil. They've been exiled from the community. They think that this person is dead, and part of the community actually thinks they were framed. This may be linked to the bandits who have been attacking the town. So the old elder might still be out there, or he might just be a boogeyman. We're not sure. This is the smallest of the villages. It only has about 200 people living there. But it's very well put together. It's a very wealthy community, and a lot of hills in this area. There's also several ranches that raise labor animals for the other villages. So lots of horses, some very oddly large rams and sheep too, that are almost as good as horses for a lot of things. It's densely populated despite being small, so the quarry camp accounts for about 60% of the population, or 30% of the population in town. And they're very friendly to outsiders. The Duluth mining camp has a camp boss who's kind of outside of the general community, and they have a sheriff and deputies that sort of helps out the castle guard as much as possible. The town is pretty prosperous, but there is an average amount of crime, mostly rowdiness from the roughnecks working the quarry and the mines. There is a Catholic church in the area, and there is a small, quiet segment of the population who actually worships the Old Norse gods in this area. They have a little temple there. There's a town gathering hall or longhouse that gets used for most things in the area. There's a regular market that meets there. There's a wishing well in the town that people believe has some special magical properties if you make a wish, but certain conditions have to be met in order for that wish to actually happen. There is a shop that is a Wainwright, it sells carts, and there's an alchemist who specializes in a very certain subset of alchemy, making dynamite. Are these Scottish dwarves? No, they're Minnesotan dwarves. Why would there be Scottish dwarves? They're from Duluth. You betcha. So yeah, there's an alchemist that creates dynamite for the mines, but they also sell a little on the side. Again, explosives don't pack quite as much of a punch as they used to, so It's still dangerous, but not as dangerous. Let's see. Because of the town's size and dense population, everybody is very much in everybody else's business. There's a lot of questions about who's going to end up marrying who, if the town's going to raise their taxes. And this town also has a haunted location, the Old Elder's house, is on a nearby hill, and the new elder wouldn't move in there because they believe it is haunted. There's been a lot of heavy rains recently that's making quarry work a little bit difficult. And there's been some cultural misunderstanding with those Duluth dwarves working the mine. Overall, wait a second. This was... Overall, Jefferson is a pretty insular community, but a pretty positive one. They don't have a lot of enemies within the community. Give me a second. See, this is why I should really have these all typed up at this point. Well, yeah, they don't have a lot of enemies within the community. They try to kind of live and let live. Let's see if I can get this to move a little bit. So Dayton, Jefferson. The next one we have is breadseed. And breadseed is another word for a very important thing to this community, and that is poppies. Breadseed primarily grows one cash crop, and that is poppies, mostly to make medicine and painkillers, but there is a heavy Blumenfeld presence within this community as they steal poppies, or they steal the morphine and create opium that they sell around the community. So, let's see. And again, if you have questions or you have ideas, I am all ears. We've been getting some really good ones today, and yeah, eager to hear what you think. Let's see. There was an interfamily feud in Breadseed recently, or a couple years ago. It led to some heavy losses and left the village very divided. Oh yeah, they're making bank there. That is absolutely correct. About 3 years ago, there was a blight in this town. Food shortage came across, and just it wasn't good. Other communities did step in, but it was a little too late, and quite a few people died. It's a very large village due to its size before that famine, and a lot of those buildings now stand empty. So that's left to a lot of squatters, bandits, and stuff actually moving into the community, and nobody knows until it's too late. They are in a large lake. They do a lot of the crops, like I said, poppies, but they also do some fishing, and they are also known for their healing herbs. There's an herbalist who lives in town here who has sort of trained a lot of the other herbalists and medicine people around the area in their ways, and what herbs are good, which ones are bad. Here's how you use these, and yeah, they're located here in Breadseed. There's also a lot of garden tracks. These gardens are primarily in the beds of old trucks, and they use the toppers as greenhouses for them. There is a traveling circus that winters here in Breadseed. They travel from the Duluth Union over to Fargo to a bunch of the smaller communities, and every winter they arrive back in Breadseed to kind of wait out the cold, snowy, wintry months. So during that time of year, Breadseed's actually a pretty jolly place. There's a influx of people some of which end up staying there after the winter. But it's a lot of bards and performers and animal trainers and stuff. It's a very neat scene. Dense population, standoffish of outsiders. They tend not to trust people who don't live within the community or aren't from the circus. And they do not have a captain. Their castle guard, who is stationed there, is actually run by a captain from the main town, because they refuse to have another captain there, mainly because that captain was actually that interfamily feud I mentioned was a result of the captain trying to take over the village from the town elder, and sort of a little fallout that happened as a result of that. There is, however, Community Watch, which is organized by a committee who oversees the area. There is still an elder, but there may or may not be some members of the Blumenfelds on the Community Watch, so that's fun. The town has very little wealth, and there is a bit of a drug problem. Imagine that. They do have an above average amount of crime when compared to some of the other villages, but they are also one of the biggest villages and have had a lot of problems with those hardships we've mentioned. There are 3 places of worship here. There is a Jewish temple, which is small but has a pretty moderate following and is very well attended. There's a small, moderately pious church here, which is probably part of the Lutheran sect. And then there's actually a secret Wiccan temple with very fervent followers, including that herbalist we mentioned earlier. There is a dance hall that is the largest one in the Newcastle region. It might just be in like an old sports stadium that they've been upkeeping. And then there's also a fairgrounds, which every spring when it gets warm enough before the circus rolls out, they put on a show before leaving, and people come from all over the region to visit and watch the circus. So. And that last show, or the first show of the year and the last show of the year, always take place at that fairgrounds. So they're always picking up new acts wherever they go. It's a very interesting, very eclectic scene. Let's see here. Superstition. Hanging mistletoe above the lintel ensures safe conduct and hospitality. Mistletoe being a protective herb, I guess. It is one of the most sought after plants in the area. There's actually an entire garden area devoted just to mistletoe. And the people in town, they hang it over their doors in order to ensure safe conduct to all that enter. And to make sure that anybody entering will also treat them with respect and keep them safe, since they've had a lot of problems with bandits and stuff. Let's see. There's been some wildlife attacks in the area, and the wildlife is also eating the poppies. So, think crazed dire wolves. Not a great thing. There's an impending workers' strike in the area as they are demanding higher pay, particularly with those animal attacks. So, adventurers might be something there for you. For some reason, this area gets the heaviest snows of any of the village. Nobody knows why, for sure, but it is like New England deep. Easily 10 feet of snow over the winter. You go a few miles in any direction, and for some reason, nope, you don't get that heaviest snow. But right here on this spot, they get a bunch. There's also rumors of a new sickness starting in the town, and that is something that the people who remember the world before the fall are very worried about, as there's not as good a public health anymore. And they remember that right before the fall, there was a major plague affecting the entire world. And they don't want it to happen again and have something wipe out the entire community. So they're watching the situation very carefully, and there may be another call for adventure from this area to try to find a cure for this virus. And that kind of wraps up Breadseed. Any questions, comments? Always value input from the community here, and love the chat. We have one last village to go over in about 15 minutes to actually hit it, and that is Pineguard, which was the first village outside of Newcastle to be founded. They were established around a overpass on the interstate that leads directly back down into the Twin Cities. As in the early days after the fall, people were fleeing the Twin Cities because there was no food, and a lot of them were kind of becoming refugees, staying and dwelling within Newcastle. And it got to the point where Newcastle established this kind of not rest stop, but block on the overpass that would lead down the road into the old town. And they did this, and they stationed guards there to turn those refugees who were arriving west, sending them to Fargo. Most of those people never seen again. But over the years, a village has sort of grown up around that overpass, which has also grown up, and now is known as Fort Exit. There's been a food shortage, or was a food shortage in the early days, but it led to some minimal losses at the fort. And during the Goblin Wars, there was a man or a person that was at this place known as the General, who was really in charge of coordinating all the troops and making sure that everybody was doing their part to fight the Goblin Scourge. And that person was killed during the Goblin Wars, and it kind of led to some terrible losses in a couple battles. The town, or this village, is almost the same size as the town, but it does not have the defensive wall that the town has. And all of the buildings are rather uniform because they're almost all were built after the fall. They're new architecture, which is all very simple and very utilitarian. This town, in addition to being the guard training center, is also the main dairy for the entire region. So they have a creamery, they've got some freezers so they make ice cream and send it out with dry ice and stuff. And then a lot of fields for the cows. Let's see. So, as I previously mentioned, there is a new lumber mill going into town, and the guard used to be the #1 employer in town, but now that's the mill. A lot of kids used to go into the guard track, and still is the most popular one, but it's being edged out a little bit by kids wanting to work in the lumber mill or be lumberjacks. It's something new and exciting that they haven't really had the opportunity to do before, so it's drawing them in. It's a very diverse community, and there is another person who's in charge, in addition to the elder and the town representative and the captain. There's also a general at the fort who's in charge of all of the castle guard and making sure that everybody is kind of readied. They travel a lot, going from village to village and into town. But they also have military police that sort of enforce the rules with the guards in the area. There's a unfortunately high amount of crime in Pineguard, mostly drunk and disorderly interactions between guards who are in training. But there's also a fair amount of cattle rustling that happens. There's the parade gathering places. There's the parade ground at the fort. There is a monument park, which is a sculpture garden from the old world that scavengers have actually loaded up the back of semi-trucks and brought new sculptures specifically for the park. Because of the size of the town and the amount of people that actually kind of pass through here, it's actually a bunch of other businesses that have popped up here. There is the Thatcher, who actually works the entire region, but is headquartered here in Pine Guard. There's a smithy, an herbalist, Cooper, who is very important for exporting all of the dairy and cheeses. There's a stable that deals with horses primarily, but also some other animals. Carpenters, and then there's actually a combination bathhouse and tavern in town. So, kind of fun. Events that happen within the town. There is the General's Day. It is celebrated primarily in Pine Guard, but because all the Castle Guard are trained there, that is a celebration that happens most everywhere, but they do it big in Pine Guard. Recently, a rumor has just surfaced that a merchant from the Southern Reach will soon arrive, where they're heading north right now, which is kind of rare that you get anybody traveling from beyond the Twin Cities up this direction. So this merchant might be coming to town to trade, or they might be coming to town to establish themselves and open a store. They're not sure. There's also been some wildlife attacks in the area, both on locals and on cattle, but nobody's gotten a real good look on what the attacking or offending creature was. So once more, there's another call to adventure. And that is all 6 of the villages that surround the community of Newcastle. We're almost out of time for the night here. So I will mention that there is a 7th village to the southwest of Newcastle that was originally called Caleb. It is now known as Caleb's Ruin, as it was destroyed and was kind of a failed experiment. It has just kind of been sitting there for the last 8 years or so. And the Canadian elves really want to go there and reestablish it. So there may be a job for the adventurers to go clear out the ruin for the elves, because the Castle Guard, for some reason, they just can't spare them. But yeah, that is the Newcastle, Greater Newcastle region. Let me know what you think. I am always open to feedback. I know we've lost some people as the night's gone on here, so if you're watching this after the fact or on our highlight reel, please feel free to send me an email at scryervision@gmail.com. And I would love to hear your thoughts or hear anything you have that might improve the setting, because we want to make this a really cool and very vibrant and lived-in universe. Most everything that I've discussed tonight was actually created by random rolls in the Spectacular Settlements book from Nord Games. So it's a really great book if you're doing world building. It really outlines how to build different communities of different sizes and different things to look into to really make them feel lived in. So if you're looking to do that, I highly recommend checking it out. I'm pretty sure they have a couple sample sections on their website. Again, that is Spectacular Settlements from Nord Games. We will probably do another one of these a little closer to the start of the show. So if this is something that you're interested in, really hope that you I really hope that you are able to tune in one more time as we discuss the greater region and some of the other factions at play, and probably introduce our player characters. So, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up by me saying, if you join our Discord server, be sure to hit the thumbs up in the landing page. so that you can actually interact. Because until you do that, until you agree to the terms of service, unfortunately, you won't be able to interact with anything. We also have some social media. Our Twitter is just at ScryerVision. Our Facebook group, we are on there as well. Again, it's just ScryerVision. Oh, rules section. My apologies, not the landing page. So yeah. Let us know if you have any questions. We look forward to interacting with you. Is Caps Lock banned on Discord too? I do not believe it is, but you'll probably get some funny looks. So, all right. I want to thank you all again for tuning in. I hope you had fun. I definitely had fun jabbering at you for the last couple hours here. And again, I'm Ryan, and we will be doing after the fall here within the next couple months. So yeah, we will see you then. And again, thank you very much for watching, and for all of you who interacted in the chat, really appreciate the feedback. I hope everybody has a fantastic night, and if you're in one of the states that it is all snowy, please be careful out there, and have a very safe journey to work if you have to drive tomorrow. All right. Night, everybody.